Hi, my name is Kevin McDonald, and I'm declaring my independence. Independence from what? Why, negative thoughts and energy, of course. Chief among them, hate, division, and fear. You see, I know that we're all one, and together we can solve any problem, save our planet and each other. Please, join me as we come together as one and choose a better way to be. So now, let's begin with my independence report. And welcome to the show, everybody. My name is Kevin McDonald, and I'm really excited about this. This is a show that is 20 years in the making. 20 years in the making, and and we're titling it, I suppose we should have talked about that prior to, but we're titling it Life Between Lives, the series. And I think, and it may change, but we'll see. But I want to introduce my cohorts in crime. First of all, I want everyone to know that we had an opportunity to talk on Martha Norwalk's show, and Natasha just kind of showed up, and she was, and we were interviewing Regan at the time, and the dynamics between the three of us was really good and really positive. So I thought we'd put this together and really have a good time doing it. So with that, Natasha Venter is with us. And Natasha, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became interested in this topic.
Well, I'm a medium, and I've always been one that has noticed spirits walking through my house. I never wanted to go to the bathroom downstairs because all I heard was and so I've always engaged with spirits. And actually my grandfather passed away in the basement of my house. So it was one of those interesting lives and family history of knowing spirits. With that I'm also very intuitive. So I work with many different dimensions of like star people to fairies to talking with animals to just doing a little bit of everything. So with that, it's given me this expression of knowing what life is about in a different way. And I've had the wonderful life of working with Archangel Azrael, which is actually the angel of death, the angel of time. He's the one that carries, endings with new beginnings. And so I've had many of those examples in my life. Like in 1 year, I had 3 pets that passed away in my lap. Including 3 years between my parents passing away when I was carrying new babies. And so with that I've always had that ending with new beginnings, and it's always been magical to see that in the life of spirit. And so with that's where I've become interested in this, because it's always been in my life and I've walked with it. So I don't know how to put it any other way besides I'm just grateful to finally be able to talk about it.
Well, it's beautiful that you're here, and you're going to provide a very unique perspective to what we're talking about. And we're going to talk to Regan Forston, who is the kind of scientific fella in our little triage here.
Yeah.
Because, so Regan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, it all started when I was 4 years old. I'd be going to sleep, and I'd fall asleep, but then I'd wake up and I'd be on the ceiling looking down at my body, and scared the crap out of me. Like I'd run into my parents' room, and my dad would come in and he'd take a broom under the bed and it'd show me the closet. There's no ghosts or anything. I didn't know what to say. Began to be kind of afraid to go to sleep because I didn't, thought it was going to happen. So I laid in bed one night on the backboard, and I tried, as a little 4-year-old, trying to hold my eyes open so I don't fall asleep. Eventually I did. And then it seemed like I closed my eyes for a moment, and then I opened them, and I had 2 entities standing in my room. I think, 2 men. I was totally comfortable, not scared one bit. They just smiled. There was like a lot of love I felt, and somehow telepathy or something. They said, it's okay, you can go to sleep. It won't happen again. And I just remember laying down. And then from then on was okay. Never had it happen again until I was in my like 23 years old. And then I was a little bit older, had some life experience, and that was kind of the wake-up call that kind of started me on a spiritual quest. There's a lot longer. We'll probably talk a little bit here and there as we do our shows over the weeks of what happened, but eventually led me in a weird sort of way through about I don't know, 10 different kind of jobs. You know, like being a real estate broker and then a professional clown. I don't know how you go from that to that, but I was kind of led there, you know, to becoming a ventriloquist and then a corporate comedian and a fake motivational speaker and then an actor in Hollywood for 12 years and then living in Mexico on my own for a year and a half. You know, then going back to school, becoming a hypnotherapist, and that led me to doing past life regressions. And then I heard about Michael Newton, his books like That's What Got You Started there, Kevin.
Yep.
And a series of things where I ended up being sick in the hospital for a month, almost died in the hospital. And that's where I had a lot of time to reflect. And that's where Michael Newton's book that I'd read previously came to me. And I decided to do this work that I'm doing now because of almost dying. It was like the universe just had to put me in a place where I had to shut up and shut down and really, you know, a place where I couldn't move for a month so I could really go deep, you know. So got certified, took about a year to get certified. And after being certified at the Newton Institute, I started doing helping carry on the work of Michael Newton since he's passed away now. Luckily, he started the Institute about 10 years before he died. And now we have about 250 or so therapists in 40 countries, you know, that are doing his work, and we're carrying on the research of what happens when a person dies. So I'm hoping in the show with the three of us, what we can do is to really just educate people that no longer is that veil so thick as it was. That God gave us a little switch in us that when we get to a certain depth of relaxation, we all can kind of flip it and we can communicate with the other side. So, you know, hopefully that's what will happen. So I'm just along for the ride and I'm loving it. You know, like I finally like life has got its purpose for me, you know, and I'm homebound now. So I've got people come to me instead of me driving all over California and Mexico for 8 years. So I love it.
That's cool. And when I said the scientific part, that's the hypnotherapy part. And
yeah,
that's the thing that you are. You both come at this from a different place. I come at this from another place, and that is about 20 years ago, I walked into a metaphysical bookstore because I really wanted to learn. I felt like, is this all there is? I didn't think death was being portrayed correctly. I didn't think life after life was being portrayed correctly. And so I wanted to find out more about it. Lo and behold, right there in front of me was Journey of Souls, which is Dr. Newton's first book.
His first book, yeah.
Yep. And so I picked it up, I bought it, couldn't put it down. And I've been waiting for the right set of circumstances for a long time to put this together so that that I could have different perspectives of the same subject that we could talk about life after death. And it happens to be a really apropos subject for me at this point because my brother has stage 4 lung cancer and is quite literally on his deathbed within days of passing away. And so I wanted to do this so that
wow.
if he chose to listen to it, it might relay some of his fears about what happens to us on the other side.
Yeah.
So, just as a thumbnail sketch, and I'm just pulling this out of my ear, Natasha,
yes.
give us your opinion about what happens to us after we die.
Well, what my opinion is that as we are transitioning from this body form, and I've always had the idea that we have 9 months in the womb. Well, some of us live to 90 years in this lifetime, and then we move on. So it's just a kind of a stepping stone to our evolution of our soul. And so from my witnessing of even being in the room as my dad passed, and having my baby who was 6 weeks away from being born in my tummy, that, you know, we have these moments where life just transitions on. And watching my dad pass and watching my mom pass, that we all take different avenues, I have an understanding, once we're gone from this body form. So like for my dad, who I always said he had 1 foot in this world and 1 in another world, because he was intuitive himself, that he spent 3 months with me, and I swear he spent some time with my son before he was born, because he's got the same kind of humor and told tricks about me that I'm like going, how did you know those? And I said, no, Dad, you know. But with that we all kind of take these different roads afterwards, where my mom, she at the last week of her life says, you're not taking me, I'm not going. And it took her a little bit longer to go around the road to get more comfortable with where she was going. But my understanding is that no matter when we die, how we die, we never go alone. There's always angels, family members, pets, past guides that have been in life forms with us that are now in spirit form for us in this maybe lifetime, that they all collect and say, welcome home. And then after that moment of welcome home, then the journey goes on. So like I work with people who, mothers, fathers who have, their children have committed suicide. And I understand that even people who have decided to leave this world on their own terms, they still have to go through a different kind of life review. And there is kind of a life review, but it depends on what kind of engagement we have. Like my dad, he had a different life review because he always had a life review when he was born, when he was alive. He always looked at life. Why is this happening to me? Why are we doing this? So his life review may be a little shorter than, let's say, my mom and her journey of needing to kind of have some different workings. And then those who have passed because of their own choice, they go through a very tender, loving stepping stone of how. I see the angels that work with them. They're a special team in my knowing that just work with these beings that have chosen to go on their own, that they have a blanket of love put around them almost instantly, and they're just carried where they need to go and work with what they needed to work with. And it's just amazing to have that understanding of, well, you know, talking to someone about their father, well, they were kind of crotchety in this lifetime, so they kind of had to figure out why they were crotchety in this lifetime, you know, and others, well, they were just love, and they just kind of went off because they knew the bigger picture, you know. So it just depends on the soul of the journey, depends on how we kind of navigate through the endings. But everyone in my witnessing, even I would say even the darkest beings, you know, and I'm going to name one that we all know is Hitler, you know, and there's others in the countries that are going on now. They're even held with the angels, but they're put into a different category of how they walk because they have to do a different life review.
Now we're going to do a whole show about negative spirits and those guys and what they go through, because Dr. Newton talks about that in great detail in both of his books. And Regan, I'd like you to take us and start us at the very beginning, which is the moment of death. What happens to us?
Well, when I do past life regressions with people, and the work that Michael Newton did, and you know, now they've had, and on the show we'll probably mention it a bunch of times so people know this isn't just something new. Over 50,000 people have done this so far, and even with Dolores Cannon, who's I'm taking her training right now too to get certified. I'm about halfway through that, and it's blowing my mind with all the things that can be done. But so you figure there's 100,000 people now that have done this, and we kind of find out when someone has a past life that they go through and they pass away, and then you're there with them in spirit. You can just kind of see what happens. And generally, just like you were saying, there's usually always somebody there to meet them, you know, whether it's their guide or a lot of times it's somebody from the life that they just relived. Let's say one of them I'm thinking was a client who, this gets confusing people when if you're listening to this every week, because there's so many different characters involved. Like when someone's doing a past life regression, there's the person in this life you're talking to, but in this one in particular, this was a little 10-year-old girl that I was doing a past life regression with. She was a man in another lifetime, and lived to be like 90 years old. But when she was a man in that lifetime, his wife died at 70 years old. And so when he passed away in that lifetime, his wife was there, and you should have seen the smile on this little 10-year-old girl's face, like she had just been reunited with her wife, his wife, you know. So there was her, the man she was, I think it was George, and it was the wife that was there. For some of my clients, and a lot of them, it's a teacher, a master. Some of them, they go, oh wow, so and so's here, like because in that state they've been with them many, many lifetimes before, and it's like old buddies meeting, you know, like, oh, I haven't seen you in a while, you know, kind of reunion. It's a little, it's different with it. There's probably 20, 30 variations, but they're all very similar. In other words, like you were saying, you're never alone. You know, there's always somebody there watching out over you. You know, just like what Natasha, you'd probably say too, that you know, our guides or something. There's always entities that are like assigned to us that are, you know, kind of hovering all the time and kind of helping us through this life. We just have to learn to be aware of them, and then life changes a lot.
It does, and that's one thing that I have an understanding is that, you know, like I've got guides that have been with me through many lifetimes, and at the same time, I also have guides that pop in, like me redoing my website. You know, a guide would pop in, help me with my website, and then leave again. You know, so it's like we have these beings that are with us, and our guides can be even just loved ones from another past life. We're never really chosen to have specific things at that time. It's just we end up carrying people with us. Like my dad, I know in different lifetimes I was his mom and he was my kid, and you know, we switched roles of male and female and grandfather and grandmothers, and you know, and I even know that through my husband. You know, there's different times when I was the woman or the man and he was the woman, you know, so my husband and I have even spent many lifetimes together.
Which is awesome. So now I just want to say that since my brother is experiencing this and Natasha has graciously verified that he is doing what she referred to as the transition.
Yes.
And when you go through the transition, and a lot of times he's sleeping a lot, he's not eating, he's not drinking, and a lot of times your soul tends to leave to go do other things before you actually pass.
Yes.
But when you actually pass, then your body functions cease. Then that's where the tunnel of light comes from, and passing through to the other side. And isn't it in the research that I've done, it's startling in the fact that people who are dying, like my brother is dying, he knows he's dying, but when he dies, he doesn't die. He's still alive. And he wakes up, and he is actually, it's a continuum, to my understanding, that it's not like it's a darkness for a long period of time. It's like, I'm here, but wait, I'm there. Now, how can that be? How can I be here and be there at the same time? Has that been your guys' understanding of how that process works?
Yeah, it's different for everybody. Some people take their time leaving this world, and like some of the research we've done, that people with Alzheimer's are souls that they don't want to go real quick. They want to stay around, usually for the benefit of their siblings or their children and things like that. So they choose to leave in increments, you know, a little bit at a time, and so that when they do pass, it's easier for everybody because, you know, they know grandma's going to die. And it's, you know, sometimes it's a longer process, but some people just decide to go just like that, you know, on a quick. Have you heard of the book? It's called Attending Angels. I read it recently. It's a book called Attending Angels, and they do what you do, where she's called to hospice with people, and she says there's a process in the dying process, and she's there, and she can see things like you can see, and she says in the book she even does diagrams and everything of exactly what she sees every time. And it's like when the person's ready to go, if the mother has already passed away, she usually ends up being, I think, at the, you see, that would be the left foot. The father ends up being at the right foot who appears. And then there's an angel. She sees an angel behind the person. And then, if I'm remembering correctly, and then any pets that have passed on are in one place. And then some different other helper angels or something that kind of form like a semicircle. And then when the person's ready to go, she visibly sees. She says it's kind of like in the cartoons, you know, when you see that little thing what people are thinking above, it kind of pulls it up from the crown of the head here. And then when the person actually passes away, she sees them. They always go off to the right, like up and to the right. The angel that's there kind of takes them. But she's done this with hundreds of people. So people call her to come into the, when people are dying, and she can tell them where in the process. Because she says sometimes the process happens really fast, but sometimes it's slow, you know, just depending on the person. It's never all at the same time. And she says in her book, and I believe it's Attending Angels, darn. But she says in her book, yeah, nobody dies alone. She says there's always a committee there, or people, the angels, people from your past that are there to kind of help you over. You know, like the wagon, what they call it, what it used to be when you moved in, and they'd have the welcome wagon come to your house years ago, you know, in the neighborhood to welcome you to the
There's many times parties. I find that, you know, especially it depends on their culture, that, you know, like a lot of the South American families that I've witnessed, that it's like there's just this big, they've got the food out, they got the candles out, they've got, you know, they're like, it's party time, you know. And it's so funny because these people are, you know, the family members are grieving, and the one that just passed, they're partying, and I just, if anything, I can give that voice to the family members that, you know, 99% of the time it is a party when they go home. And even though sometimes and that's maybe the first thing that happens, but then there's always the reviews that happen later. And, you know, and our timeline is so different. Yeah. In that time, like I was watching Touched by an Angel Saved Me while my dad was passing and I was having my baby. And there was one series that said that, you know, the angel said, a minute in this life, a physical being, is like a lifetime in the spirit realm. And so with that, you know, that's why even the 6 weeks with my dad passing and my child being born, I knew that my son was getting a download, you know, and it was a lifetime of a download, because there's so much grace that my older son has that nobody in the family has. I mean, he walks into a place and people put him with somebody who's troublesome, and he go, and they go, when he comes back, did you have problems? Did you have problems? He goes, I just put groceries in their car. And he walks off. You know, it's like, he doesn't get bothered by things. And that's, my dad had that kind of grace too. So I think he gave him some one-on-one things. You know, wow. You never know how things are, because it's such an individual walk. Just like we're individuals in this lifetime, it's an individual passing in that lifetime.
Now, in either of your understanding, because this has happened in my family at least 2 or 3 times, when there has been a visitation from someone who has recently passed, either via dream or a vision, and this, because they want to console the individual, they were close to them in life, and they want to console them and help them with their grieving process. You both know that to be true. You're both nodding your head like yeah. Crazy. So. Well,
yeah. In the research that Michael's done, and that what we found out in all these cases is there's, in Michael's book, Destiny of Souls, that's the one he wrote 10 years after Journey of Souls, because he had, you know, 10 years more of cases to do. He found out that there's a number of different ways, and it's very, very, very common that when people pass on, they want to relieve the mourning of a lot, you know, a lot of the people that are going through a lot of stress. So they'll, one of the most common ways that they do it is to insert themselves a person could be having a dream about something. They can pretty much just use their energy and just insert themselves in a dream, you know, whether it's just to go hi bye or smile or something, just to connect with the other person. But one of the ones I thought was kind of neat was this man had passed away, and the wife was just, you know, beyond mourning for him. And what he used to do all the time in life, he would sneak up behind her sometimes and he would blow right behind her ear, you know, like this, and then she'd turn around and giggle or something. That was kind of their thing or something. So when he's on the other side, and Michael Newton, you know, was the facilitator, and this person had passed away, and says, "Are you ready to go on to heaven?" And he says, "No, I got to stay around and make sure my wife's okay." So they tried something and it didn't work, and he says, and so he used all of his energy that he could to try to go from that realm to this realm. So she's sitting in a chair in the living room, you know, looking at some of his pictures and crying or something, and he was able. All of a sudden, she goes like this, you know, and she goes, "Oh my God, you're here, aren't you?" You know, and he could just see how much that, and he says, "Now I can go," you know, because he knew he made contact with her, you know. So there's a lot of stories in the cases that we have, you know, where they talk about how they managed to get through, you know.
And Natasha, go ahead.
And I wanted to say something that a lot of people ask me about, and I want to do it right now because we just talked about spirits coming and visiting loved ones right after they've passed. Yet at the same time, some wonder, why hasn't my loved one come? And I want to say that loved ones will come. Part of the reason why we as humans do not see our loved ones is because we're so in depth in our grief that we're not able to see out beyond this.
Yeah.
And I just put my hands in front of my face because and walking through grief does this. You know, it makes us see only what we can see, which is pretty much only sometimes inches in front of our face. And I want you to know, the ones that are listening, that, you know, loved ones are around. But grief does sometimes just make us so we can't feel them because we're wanting it so bad that it blocks that ability to know it.
That's what they say on the other side, that sometimes people's grief is so much that they can't do it. A lot of times they'll use the grandchildren
Yes.
to get through. Like there'll be a grandchild and they'll go, there's mom, there's grandma or something, you know, because the young children are so open that way. I remember my daughter had when she was in kindergarten, one of the classmates there died on the playground. And the next day, my daughter was at school, and she just talked about, said she wasn't exactly on the ground. She says, "Well, I saw her. You know, this is a kindergartner talking. She was there." So my daughter had a vision of her, you know, waving goodbye or something like that. So it's interesting because children are so much more open than us adults, you know. So I'm kind of hoping in this series we do, you know, with the three of us here, because some of these things, when people are listening to this now, it's going to be a wall to crack a little bit, because part of them is going to be going, "I can't stop listening to these guys, but this is kind of weird," you know. You know,
Yep.
But
let me tell you a story real quick.
they're going to find out it's going to get, if they just keep listening and listening, it's going to get in a little bit, and then pretty soon they'll go, "Whoa, this is so natural and normal. This makes so much more sense than what I believed before."
It's like the breath.
Yeah, let me tell you a story real quick, which is one of the reasons why I got really interested in this, and it just popped into my head. When my father-in-law passed away, he had congestive heart failure, and so he was in the hospital for a week. The last day they had him on a ventilator, and they decided, my ex-wife decided that she was going to go ahead and take him off the ventilator. Well, he subsequently died real quick after they took him off the ventilator. But in the process, my sons were driving from they were in Olympia. My sons were driving from Seattle to Olympia, which is about a 60-minute drive. I was talking with a friend of mine who happens to be a medium. She's not as good as Natasha, but she had a gift. And my ex-wife called me and said, Grandpa's passed. My sons are on their way to Olympia because they wanted to see him before he passed, but they didn't make it in time. So this person says to me, there's a little man here and he's smiling. He's very happy. And she described my father-in-law to a T. She said, and I said, well, what's he doing? And he said, well, he's just wanting me to tell you that everything's cool. He's fine. And everything's just perfect. In the meantime, so we're having this 15, 20-minute conversation. My son calls to tell me that they're almost to the hospital. And this little man who's talking to this medium says, oops, gotta go. So he splits from her to go back to the hospital so that he could say goodbye or be there when my sons got there to say goodbye. And that's when I knew, holy shit, this stuff is real. This is not fake. It's real. And she had no idea who he was and stuff. So so they do that all the time for us, don't they? Because they're really interested in making us not hurt.
Yeah.
Well, like for me, my father, when he passed, that my mom really was in grief. And so I could tell that and I'm an only child, so he would go back and forth between my mom and me. But we had one lamp that we had changed the light bulb 15 times, I swear. And then I had this one clock, and it was in the middle of the house, and the door would open up all the time. And even if I jumped on the floor, it would not open up. But the thing is, though, the latch didn't go down. It went up.
Oh.
So if I jumped, it wouldn't even move, and it would have fallen down naturally, but it would go up. And this latch was opening all the time. Well, remember, I was carrying his grandson, and it would have been the first baby of the family. And so with that I know that he spent some time with me, and knowing that I had this understanding when I was sitting in the hospital, there again, intuitive, that I had a choice of either being in grief or having a grief type of emotion, because I didn't want my child, when I was carrying him, to be bombarded by all that grief hormone. And so I really tried myself, even though my dad and I, we spoke, we finished each other's sentences. We were even when I was a baby, I was always on his shoulders. It was like we were two teammates. And so with that I know my dad was watching over me, making sure that I was okay, going to be okay through this process of the transition of what I was going through. Because that summer, bought my first house. 6 weeks later, my dad died. 6 weeks later, I had my first son. So it was like one of those things that it was just one of those summers that I just needed some TLC. And my dad knew me. He just knew me.
So Regan, in your understanding and in the work that you've done, people who do not contact us don't, because there's the wall of grief and it's too difficult to penetrate, and a lot of us don't believe in that kind of stuff anyway, so they just poo-poo it, right? They just say that, or a perfume smell, or cigar tobacco smell, or something that comes out of, you don't know where it is or why it's there, but it's a sign from them that they're okay. Has that been your understanding as well?
I would say more times than not, don't discount it, because the physics is different between, coming from that side to this side, and they use their energy to just in some way influence people. And sometimes, like when my wife's mother passed away, she lived on this little lake, and there was these swans that lived on the lake that were there all the time. And when she passed away, for the first time, the swans came from the other side of the lake over to her side, over there. And then when we were having her, when we were all leaving town, having breakfast at the ocean, all of a sudden out of nowhere, here comes a swan. Now this is at the ocean. How often do you see a swan at the ocean? You see all the other birds.
Oh yeah.
Here comes this swan, you know, squawking or whatever noise they make right over us, you know, at the time. And there was about 20 other things that happened. Her mom was really shouting, I'm okay, I'm okay. You know, I mean, there were so many things. We were starting to count them up. They said, well, now there's been 6 things and 7 things. And it just made everybody feel okay, you know, like it was her time. Oh, and before I forget too, there was another book I read too, and it was by Dr. Moody, which a lot of us know. You know, he's the one that did books on the near-death experiences, an actual doctor that taught people that had a near-death experience and what they experienced. And then years later, he did one called Parting Visions. And it was about, he interviewed nurses and family members that were at their relatives' passings, you know, it happened. And it was all these great stories where, you know, like the person in bed, they're almost comatose, and then they wake up for a second and they go, wow, mom and dad are here. And then they pass away. Like they're seeing, it's like the veil got lifted and they were in this body, but they were seeing the people from the other side there to welcome them. And one really beautiful story was about this boy that had been burned very severely. He was what do you call it? Intensive care. And he got downgraded, so he wasn't intensive care. So he was in a room by himself, and the nurse left for a bit. And then a little bit later, when she was walking down the hall by the room, she saw the outline of an angel with the little boy walking by her, and they were walking down the hall and disappeared. And she went in the room, and the boy had just passed away. And the nurse says, well, you're going to think I'm crazy, but that's what I saw, you know. So there's that book, and it's a good bridge book, as I call, for people that are trying to understand this kind of thing when they look at research, you know, that's been done instead of just stories or anecdotal stuff from people. And I read a book, it must be 10, 15 years ago when he came out with it, but it's I think it's called Parting Visions. And that's another good book for people to start understanding this kind of thing, you know.
Now, just let me check in with both of you. These are not ghosts or apparitions or anyone that's out to hurt you. These are our loved ones. Natasha?
I would say yes. There is a huge difference between spirits who linger. Let's say, you know, you can walk into a bar and you can see a bunch of spirits around because they probably died when they were drinking and driving, or something happened and that was their go-to spot. Those spirits, in a way, are different because they could have been from 60 years ago, 80 years ago. And then we have the other spirits that are more, let's say, either guides, or I'm going to even call them the dark side, you know, that they're not of our, I can't say they're not for our benefit, because some are for our benefit. That's a different story.
We'll get to that later.
We'll deal with that later. But there are, you know, dark beings that attach. And me working in elementary school, I see a lot of those dark beings that, you know, like, let's say if a family member is an alcoholic and there's the doorway for a negative being to be with the kid or something like that. But I want you to know, though, that every child that goes home, there's a different way that they're handled because of more their innocence. They decided to come into this life in a different timeline than maybe the 80-year-old. And so there's just a different, I don't want to call it respect, but honor. That's maybe a better word, of honoring this soul that decided to walk the path in such a short time. Because many of these souls that have been here such a short time, you know, they're the ones with the cancers that riddled their bodies, and they just had to, they almost had to walk the life of, let's say, you know, not choosing a belief system, but Jesus, you know, where just riddled with all these aches and pains and life stories in one single lifetime of 8 years or 10 years, you know. It's amazing to watch the honor, the care, the support, the grace, the love. I mean, there's no greater love than that. And I just did talking about love, I just did a video on my experience that I had after 9/11. And I wanted to kind of talk about this, if I could, Kevin, for a minute.
Sure.
That I had
a birthday, after all.
What's that?
It is my birthday after all.
Yes,
Are you kidding? It is your birthday today?
No,
No.
9/11.
9/11.
9/11. Wow.
I took my kid to school, and on the way back, I started feeling really heavy. And just the moment of all the grief that was going on. Well, within a short time afterwards, that I just noticed that there was a spirit with me. And she ended up coming to me. Now, I live across the country, so I'm on the West Coast, New York's on the East Coast, and the spirit came to me and asked me what happened. And so I was able to get quiet enough, and having a new baby, and doing some other, and taking the second grader to school, that I had to get quiet. And so we went on a journey, and we went back, and we found her body, and it was in the rubble. And when we did I'm just going to shorten up the story, but we went in, and she visited her body for a little while, went in and visited her home. But this is the thing that I wanted to come to in the story, is that as we came out, she knew it was time to go. And the one thing she wanted me to let the man that she was married with, that she loved him so dearly. And she was so sorry that she went in this timeline. But we both looked up, and the ring of angels that were hand to hand, and the beauty of the rainbow that these angels made in this ring over the New York City, specifically over this one spot. And the song that they were singing, it was so, to this day, and that's 19 years ago, I can hear the song still, and it was just love. And it was amazing how, even though there was all these spirits that were collectively passing at the same time, there was this ring of angels singing love with the gloriousness of color, and watching, even though there were some spirits that had a hard time going, there was an angel to coax them, to take them home, and would help them up through and send them through the I want to call it porthole of angels, and then come back down and get somebody else. There, no matter where we go, what we do, there's always somebody to help us pass.
Very nice. That's a great story. So
yeah,
now,
that is great.
Regan, at what point, typically, do we decide, all right, I've been here. To my understanding is a lot of people stay through the funeral. They want to see who shows up. And it's kind of a bit of an ego thing for them. It's like, look at my funeral, how many people, but at what point, typically, do we decide that it's time to go home?
Well, and the people when I do the past life regressions with, it's like it's a personal choice. You know, like when they get to the other side, some of them are interested in seeing who came and seeing who's grieving, and but what we found out is that when we get to the other side, we switch to our loving self. You know, usually the ego's gone. It's not so much a thing, well, let me see who shows up. It's more of to be there to console people, or just out of curiosity. And some people don't even, I would say some people that are a little more advanced souls a little bit, you know, they don't even care about the funeral. It's like, let's just go. You know, I just want to go to where I go between lives now. Let's just go. Everybody's going to be okay. You know, they don't even stick around, you know, sometimes because they've just done this so much, you know. So it's different. But generally, people are there. Well, maybe it's there sometimes because that's when I'm being a facilitator. One of the questions I ask them is, when I'm at the death scene, I says, okay, now you've passed away. You're above your body looking down, and I say, who was there when they passed away? And then I say, okay, 1, 2, 3, now we're at your funeral. Let's see who was there, who's officiating, what are they doing with your body? I had I laugh at this. It's funny because it was funny to actually, both of us had a client under, in this lifetime, this is a guy that, he's all over the place. I mean, he's always climbing the next mountain, you know, never stays in one place too long, always moving around, doing stuff. So in a past life, he was a young boy on the men on the boat just called him Boy. He was like the servant on this boat of our ship for the other people that were there. Anyway, I had him go a little further on in that to something that was happening, and he was actually the ship had sunk, and he was treading water, and another ship came up with people that didn't speak his language, and they kept him like, you know, prisoner for a couple of years, making him clean fish because he's under. He made such funny. He goes, "Ooh, stinky fish," you know. He's cleaning fish and stuff. Anyway, he eventually escaped from them. He's in India. We know from the elephants and the stuff he's doing, and I had him go to the day when he died, and he was goofing around with this guy that had a cobra in a basket, like, and he was playing with the cobra and got bit and died. And so I had him go to his where they buried him or something, and his face goes, "Oh, they just threw me in the river," you know. They just had taken his body and just threw it in the river, you know. And that look on his face, and he just like, "Oh my God, they just threw my body in the river." So, you know, it's interesting sometimes when they stick around that way, you know. And then they go, "Okay, I'm ready to go," and then I'll have them turn around, and there's sometimes we call it the gateway, and sometimes we get stuck there a little bit because, you know, part of their conscious mind is realizing what's going on, and they're not able to just kind of let go, because during this whole process, it's like half of their attention is in this world and half of it's there, you know, watching that. So sometimes it bounces back and forth, and I have to like get them a little more relaxed or something. But inevitably, even if it takes a few minutes or sometimes 20, 30 minutes, somebody shows up. Like sometimes they'll just see lights, and they'll say, "Well, it looks like stars," and they'll say, "Is one larger than the other?" And they go, "Yeah." I say, "Well, move closer to that," and then they get closer, and they'll go, "Oh my God, that's so and so," you know. And they're seeing energy instead of actually physical bodies, but they recognize that energy as an entity or a person, and that's what makes the experience. When they come out of it, they go, "I couldn't have made that up, because who would have thought I would see this energy and I would know who it was?" And then they form. And then it seems like on the other side, because energy is our true self, the soul, we're energy, not bodies. But for the human mind to see it, the entities on the other side will form as bodies, you know, something so we can relate to the human side of ourselves, you know. So yeah, it's interesting at that gateway what happens.
It's also going to be interesting because this is and one of the reasons why I wanted to do it this way and to create a series out of it is so that we could go in depth into each part of what happens after we die. And
yeah.
So what we're going to do today, because I want to make sure that we get your information out and Natasha's information out so that people can contact you if they have a need to. So this episode was about what happens around when we die. Now we're at the gateway, and what happens at the gateway to the next step.
It's like the excitement is just about to begin. So tune in for the next show to see where you go and what you get to do when you're there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so, Regan Forston, give us some information about how we can get in touch with you.
My website is visittheafterlife.com. Very simple. Visittheafterlife, all spelled out, .com. And on there, there's a free book on there that I'm giving out right now about reincarnation is real, and also my book 3 hours 33 minutes in heaven is there. It's about when I got to spend 3 hours and something in heaven, and there's videos on there that show people going through the process. It kind of educates you about what's going on, and so visit the afterlife. Feel free to visit it anytime.
This series is going to cover all of it. It's going to cover life between lives, reincarnation, why we come back, who we come back as, and who we get to play with while we're here, and what the program is.
Yeah.
I'm going to do all of that. Natasha, if somebody needs your work and needs who you are, how do they get a hold of you?
They can reach me at Angelic Clarifications. Make sure there's 2 C's and an S at the end. .com, and I am right now running a special because of our life right now is kind of a life-altering experience. So I wanted to give my aid to people if they were choosing. So I have a special of $60 for an hour and $40 for a half hour for a session. You can also reach me on Facebook, Natasha Venter, Angelic Clarifications, and Instagram and Twitter.
And we're also starting a new podcast that
Yes.
is going to be in behalf of Natasha. It's called Life Clarifications. And it's going to be, you'll be able to call in and talk to her. And it's good. I'm really looking forward to all of this because it's going to be great fun to do all of it. And so I'm excited about that. Forston or Regan, anything else you'd like to add before we go today?
No, I'm excited about doing this series because, you know, we have to kind of be spoon-fed a little bit, as they say on the other side. They spoon-feed us. So today, if you got just a little bit out of this and there's something inside you that says, oh, maybe this is real, maybe it's not crazy, you know, then that means you're on the right track, you know. So just keep opening yourself up. And the fact that you're watching this now a little bit, your teachers or whoever are around you that are there are going thumbs up, because that means that you're opening the door a little wider so that they can begin to help you more in your life. And yeah, I'm excited.
So don't be surprised if a song shows up, a book shows up, somebody shows up to tell you something that you don't know yet. And
Exactly. Animals will pop up in your life. You know, there's just these different amazing things. And that's one thing that I wanted to let people know too, is that as much as we're feeling alone, you know, we're not alone. We still have the angels with us. We're still having support. And so if you do have a bird that flies by you, name it and even Google it, you know, intuitive meanings or, you know, mystical meanings for bat or crow or whatever it is to support you in this journey, because life is always calling out to us and supporting us, especially our loved ones.
Yeah, matter of fact, that would be a good topic. We could do a whole hour on what we call God sightings, and how, you know, the language that between that side and here, and how, you know, how God lets you know, like these, when people go, whoa, what a coincidence, and they start realizing, well, that wasn't a coincidence, that was a little miracle they just did for you.
There ain't no such thing as a coincidence.
You know,
that's been my understanding. We've been talking here. By the way, my name is Kevin McDonald. You're listening to My Independence Report. I got 130 episodes up. Please go to them and view them all. We've got several on past lives and reincarnation and stuff. But this is going to be the creme de la creme of them all. It's going to be the best one.
We're going to dig deep, aren't we?
We are indeed. So with that, I hope that everyone has a wonderful day, and be kind to each other. Be nice. Would be a really good thing for you to do. So with that, on behalf of Natasha, on behalf of Regan, we're going to see you next week. We're going to do one of these a week, and unless I can convince them into doing more, but we'll see. They're busy people. So you guys have a great day, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, what did you guys think?
You're still recording.
That was fun.
I know. I'll Hey, and thanks for listening to this episode all the way to the end. Hey, pretty cool. Hey, don't forget to follow us so you can receive regular updates and new posts. And remember, take care of each other, because each other's all we got.